better off recording it, aren't I, really? And if anybody, look, so just in terms of this recording, if you're not, if you would rather not be on the recording at all, it will only be as a resource for other teachers. So if you'd rather not be on the recording, then do feel free to turn your camera off. And I will only use this to share with other teachers to help them too. So that's the situation on that. And for those of you who are not muted, if you could mute yourself, that would be great, just in case we get any interruptions. Mary in Peacehaven, you're just down the road, Mary, from me. I'm in Rottingdean, so just round the corner. Well, not round the corner, down the road. Catherine, Granville. Where's Granville, Catherine? Where have we got Catherine? There we go. Sevenoaks. Okay, so local too. So yeah. Cool. Hi, Darren. I didn't think you looked like a Trisha. But my name's Kim, so who am I to judge? Great. And is that local too, Brighton area? Yeah, cool. So I'm guessing you guys have heard about this just through like my personal connections. It was literally like a really last minute thing I sort of pulled together from last week, because I had a conversation with my brothers, who I've got young kids, but they're not in school yet. Well, one's in nursery, and we'll see how long that lasts for. But that they both sent these videos of their kids like at home just going crazy on Zoom, and shouting when it was on mute, just not really being engaged with the lessons. And then I spoke to another friend who's a head of science at school, and she said, just teachers have been quite like anxious about this and having to like relearn loads of stuff, and realizing that it's quite different to teaching in the class. And I just thought, well, there's so many people I know who literally have, even before this year, have spent so much time becoming experts in giving online lessons and teaching online, that they've picked up lots of sort of tips and tricks that are different to if you were in a real life situation, right? So teaching through a screen and trying to keep people engaged, adults, let alone children, is hard. So I really felt for all the teachers who, when I spoke to my friend, I felt for her, and it was just like, well, I feel like I could give her some tips, and I feel like the people who I know could give some tips as well. So I thought, why not try and connect that up and just offer some help. And hopefully some of the stuff that will get covered this week will be new, and stuff that's and some will be obvious as well. Some might be stuff you've already sort of picked up or heard from friends or whatever. But the big thing that was missing from this week was actual input from you guys, from real teachers, because I can say what I think would be helpful, but really the best way is to hear from you and know what you've struggled with most so far. So it'd be really great to just get a quick feel for that from those who are here, and see if hopefully our sort of presumptions are right with stuff, and just hear about what you've been finding most difficult so far. So if anyone wants to share some of that, get it off your chest and have a bitch. There's no kids here, so say what you want. Then I'd love you to do that. Is anybody prepared to just share with me what they've found most difficult so far? If you are, just unmute yourself and go ahead.
I'm happy to share. We've been asked to use Teams, and I've never used Teams in my life. Okay. So every day is like a learning curve. So that's the bit that's stressful. It's not actually the being in front of the kids so much, and the parents. I know some teachers are a bit anxious about being in front of the parents. That doesn't worry me. It's my ignorance with the technology. Okay. And not being able to use the technology well enough and slick enough, because I teach young ones, so it's got to be quick. You've got to be able to just do it, and you've got to be able to move really quickly to keep their attention. And I'm finding my way with that still.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. I've making some notes as you guys are talking, because as I say, it's really important to get to know what you need most. Anybody else? Thanks, Mary.
Hello.
Trisha, sorry, not Trisha, Darren.
Um, yeah, I've struggled with the same thing as Mary. Like, we're using Zoom, and it's been that like every day trying like new things and keeping them entertained. You know, I teach 6 to 7 year 2, and trying to be pacey, but also like times when the Zoom connection will drop, or everyone's talking at once. I'm getting used to using the mute all, but it's just trying to figure out what I can do and what I can't do. I tried to do like a counting session today, and that trying to get everyone to count at the same time, that didn't really work out.
Okay, so it's like, so it's the tech as well, but also the sort of when something kind of doesn't go quite to plan.
Yeah. On Friday, halfway through my Zoom, the internet dropped, and I all I could hear was the children shouting down the connection, going, "Mr. Taffner, you're frozen! You're frozen! You're frozen, Mr. Taffner!" Like, it's frustrating.
Yeah, I bet. Thanks for sharing that, Darren. Welcome to Anne-Marie, who's just joined us. Hi. I was just saying, if anybody wants to share on like the biggest frustrations and difficulties so far, if you've got anything to share, I'd love to hear it.
I think I find checking on individual children, so you can deliver the lesson, but then if you're trying to get answers or check that everybody is, there's quite a lot of kids to sort of check, so it's juggling lots of things, isn't it? Because you're trying to make the lesson interesting and have different things, so perhaps have a PowerPoint and perhaps have some annotation and have some questions, and then you're trying to sort of engage with them. And so I think I'm just finding it a bit overwhelming, having all the different balls to juggle, and but specifically, I suppose my point was about checking in with individuals to see, where they are in the learning, in the lesson.
Yeah, that is a really good point. Thank you, Catherine. And Marie, hi. I'm just going to ask you to unmute.
Yes, hello.
Hi.
Thanks so much. Sorry I was late.
That's all right. You sound like one of your students.
So one of my things is I didn't take into consideration maybe at the beginning how, I'm shy on camera. And so the only way for the students to interact with me is the chat or putting up their hand like I'm doing now, and then hearing their voice in front of everybody else. And so finding other ways for them in the moment. Of course, there's all the stuff that you give them that they send you and what have you. But I'm a dance teacher as well, so I know it's completely different. But I'm just looking for and any things that I think, it's all translatable, what you do in your classrooms.
So it's like you're finding that kids, what might be a little bit, once they put their hand up, they know that we're in front of everybody on the camera. They might be a bit scared of that, shy of that.
Yeah, just the whole camera thing seems really, for the kids I'm teaching. So it's the comfort level, creating safe spaces, which of course, is all about in the classroom. There's so many more ways that I've developed, I feel, in person. And so it's trying to develop those with a flat screen. So you don't have the going around in different ways, and just so many, so many possibilities. I feel, I'm sure I'm missing a whole bunch. So I'm hoping to get some ideas.
Yeah, so it's translating those things that you've techniques. I guess all of you guys have your own sort of ways in the classroom, and it's trying to translate that into this new space or lack of space. Okay, comfort levels. And so I'm not texting, I'm making notes on my phone. It's good to share with the people who are doing the rest of the sessions this week.
Actually, can I just add on to that?
Sure.
It's also the problem that I've never met these kids before, so I'm meeting them online.
Oh, okay,
So
interesting.
we have no history. So yeah, and then there you meet them, and they've got to be on camera. So yeah.
Okay. That sounds like more of a less common problem. Have you, the rest of you guys, are you teaching the same kids you would normally? Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like you've got an extra challenge there, Anne-Marie. Yeah. Well, cool. So does anybody else want to share any of the any difficulties they've had? Okay. Cool. So I've got some good notes there, and I will feed them back to the people who are contributing in the following lessons this week. So the way that I thought this week would work is, as I mentioned, this is like super last minute. Had the idea, reached out to people on LinkedIn. Obviously, I realised that lots of lots of teachers, not really, LinkedIn's not really a place where you'd be necessarily, but that's just kind of where my network is and where people who I know can contribute to this are. And so the idea was that each week we've basically, of the next 4 sessions, have a different contributor, so someone else will come and be a guest on these webinars. So you can just join today, or you can join all 5, and hopefully there'll be different stuff on each thing. Oh, hello, someone's upside down. Brilliant. Classic Zoom. Have you had any upside down students yet, guys? All right, I am. So this is what I've just done there is one of the features. I wasn't going to give this as a tip, but if you are using Zoom, then I'm guessing you guys can just see me now, whereas a minute ago you could someone popped up upside down. Is that right? Can you see me okay? You'll just see me, right? What I just did there, because Philly, hi Philly, because Philly popped on upside down and kind of sort of was a little bit of a, some of you might have seen that, and maybe a bit of a jarring distraction. What I actually did was at the top of the screen on Zoom, you see, if you, depending on how your Windows configured, you see sort of everybody else, right? And you see yourself. And if you're the host, you can double click on yourself to pin. Basically, it means pin yourself, and therefore you're the only person who's going to be seen. So if someone is causing distraction and there's sound or something that's making your screen switch to that person, then you can go up to yourself on your little small version of yourself, and you can pin that. And then if it doesn't work by clicking on it, there's 3 small dots, and you click on those dots, and then you can in the drop down menu it says pin. And so I've pinned myself now, so you should just see me. Anne-Marie, yes, you'll have to unmute yourself too.
Can I ask a question about that? Because when I first started on Zoom, the organization who I was teaching for said for me to ask everybody else to pin, but I could just do it myself for.
So with when you pin, it basically means you are the person who's being seen.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure why everybody would pin. I'm just trying to think of why they might have told you that, but
because it seems much nicer, yeah, if I'm the teacher arriving, that I do that. But I was always
so
told
I would suggest that you are as the host, you are like in control essentially as of the functionality. So you can, there's lots of things you can do, like technically with like Zoom and Teams, and someone else said, does that work in Teams? There isn't an equivalent, but these things technically at the moment, what I will say is, because so to a bit more background just before we get into the tips and stuff like that, is that this time last year I taught video and video production video creation and video marketing and that kind of stuff. And I was always teaching in person, right? So I would always go into a company business and I'd be with a room full of people, much like you guys would. And then, you know, overnight I had to switch. And there's so many other people who did the same in the business world of last year as what you guys are having to do now, or you've done, some of you might have done this last year as well. But so what the kind of stages that you go through is, first off, you're like, technology not working, and it's just like a panic. But what you realize is actually quite soon the functionality in terms of where the buttons are and that kind of stuff, those answers are actually quite easy they're relatively easier to find. And once you do it once or twice, you kind of remember it and you've got it right. So that initial stage of the first week or the first couple of weeks of like technology panic is like difficult. But then the next bit, which you realize is a bit more difficult than just figuring out where the buttons are, is just the engagement and the keeping people's attention, right? So I just thought I'd add that because it's the technology is the thing that mucks everything up at first, but then it kind of, you'll soon will get your head around the tech, and it will become the engagement that's more of the thing that takes a bit more effort long term, if that makes sense. So in terms of how you should run your sessions, I would always recommend you being in charge of things. So like, for example, I'm hosting this on Zoom tonight. So what's going to be fresh in my mind is Zoom. For those of you who are using Teams, then later on in the week, we'll have, I'm going to share with you the program actually of the people I've got on. And I usually focus on Zoom because I'm usually in charge of my space and this is where I feel comfortable most. Whereas other experts would be focused and know every answer about Teams off the top of their head. I know how to use Teams and I can do it, but off the top of my head right now, I can't tell you the exact buttons, if that makes sense, because I'm currently on Zoom. But we have got guests who much more would use Teams much more, and they'll be able to answer these questions like super quick. So there's slightly different features to Zoom and Teams, but for the most part they're similar. You know, it's engaging through video. So going back to just how this week will work, you can come to any or all of the sessions. I'll share with you at the end of this session a little sort of flyer that you can hand out to more teachers or the rest of your school if you found this useful, and hopefully we can have as many teachers as possible getting some questions answered or picking up some tips. So Philly, I was just asking everybody about the main difficulties they've faced so far and what they see as being a difficulty with teaching in this new way for now. So if you have anything to add, it'd be great to hear. If not, no worries.
Well, as you can see, slight flaws in our technology. 1 minute I'm here, the 1 minute I'm not here. Yeah, because most of mine's done from home. So yeah, it depends on the how much Wi-Fi strength we've got going and whether the technology decides to work.
Okay. So and Wi-Fi, yeah, Wi-Fi is a thing, definitely. So so you noticed Philly pop up there. It's because I unpinned myself as she was talking. I was a bit late on that, but this is like one of the things. If you want people to be seen when they're talking, then don't pin yourself. If you just want to be the person seen, then pin yourself. And that could be a decision based on, like you said, Anne-Marie, like the comfort levels of people being on camera. So if you think they'd be more comfortable just seeing you the whole time, then you can pin yourself. I'll do that again. Then you can pin yourself and you're the one being seen and everybody else will just be seen small. So that might be a way to go around that. So Amy just joined, Amy Smith. If you have anything to add, Amy, I was just asking everybody what their main difficulties have been so far and what they see might be a difficulty, you know, a couple of weeks down the line, potentially. if you have anything to add, then I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, so for me today, it's actually just been internet. I haven't been able to get good connection, so it's been a bit of a nightmare. I've been going between my laptop and between my computer. So just been a bit of a nightmare just trying to get that obviously sorted. It keeps coming in and out of connection. So then I think that's the main thing, because then you start losing engagement with the kids and you obviously want to get that back quickly. So it's obviously issues are, because I'm doing it from school as well. So it's a shame that it's not, internet isn't as great as what it could be, which is a bit disappointing.
Time for them to upgrade. Along with everybody else who's trying to upgrade at the moment. Cool. Okay. Well, thanks for that. So, yeah. So each night we'll be here from 4 till 5, and there's a different guest each night who have got a different set of skills, but all about engagement and creating learning online and stuff like that. So, you know, feel free to join us. Feel free to spread the word of this. You know, it's just free, and everybody's just giving their time for free, just to hopefully ease a little bit of strain on you guys. So what I thought I would do is share with you my 5 top tips that I kind of learned quickly. And I'm mainly focusing on the video portion tonight, because obviously that's my area of skills. So I'm going to share with you 5 top tips on how to sort of be engaging on video, because at the end of the day, you guys are being seen through video and not being seen in real life. So hopefully that'll be helpful. And once we've done that, we'll have some more like actual questions where I'll try to provide answers, because you know, you've told me some of your problems, and at the end we'll go to questions where hopefully I can get more direct questions, more direct answers. Cool. So you should be able to see my screen now. So 5 tips for hosting engaging lessons online. So the first thing, other than a tip, I think like the key for visual connection, so it's connecting with people visually when you're online, is to try and replicate a personal tutoring session and not an online tutoring session. Like if you were teaching one of the kids one-to-one, right? So I'm just talking about the visual, the way it looks visually on screen. I'm not talking about the learning techniques. I'm not talking about the engagement techniques. I'm focusing on the way you look on screen and the way the kids see you. It's if you think about how you would look if I was teaching you one-to-one, how would I look? You know, we'd probably be sat across a table from each other, or we might be sat in a coffee shop, or it's a certain sort of feeling of distance and space, right? So like if I look, for example, if I look at you guys now, and I don't want to pick on anyone, and I'm not having a go, but like when you've got this, or when you've got, oh, I probably shouldn't move my whole setup because that'd be difficult. Or when you've got a situation where you're looking down at the camera. So when people are sort of looking down at the camera, it's kind of unnatural to where you would be if you were in real life, right? And if we were seeing each other in real life, then you'd be able to see sort of quite a lot of the upper body, and you'd be able to see hands moving, and you know, it'd be in proportion basically, and it would feel natural. So when you're presenting yourself on video, when you're framed more naturally, it's instantly more engaging, but just to humans, because it feels a bit more like real life. If you're really close up, or if you're really far away, or if you're in the dark, or if, you know, all of these things that contribute to a sort of unnatural looking image of yourself, is kind of strange. And you wouldn't necessarily want to replicate you in a classroom, because then you'd be too far away and you wouldn't be engaging then, right? So the thing to think about is, what would you look like if you just sat in front of someone giving a personal sort of session? And if you can try and think about that, then that naturally becomes a more sort of engaging framing and way to be seen on the screen. So that's the first thing I just wanted to say, and all the rest of the tips kind of contribute toward that. So the 5 tips are: get on the same level, stand out, names and eye contact, raise your energy, and optimize your calls. And I'm going to go through each one individually. So this is just words at the moment. I appreciate it's just words. So the first one is get on the same level. So what I would recommend is to physically move your setup, like whether that's your laptop, your computer, your camera, so it is on the same eye level as the person viewing the video. As I say, when someone's looking up at you or looking down at you or looking at the side of you, it's a lot less engaging than if we're just on the same level and you're trying to stay on that same level. So it's the most common mistake that people do all the time on Zoom calls is they're sort of looking down at people because their laptops are there and they haven't got a separate webcam. So what you need to do is physically move your laptop up on some books, stack it up so that that camera is at eye level. Okay, and that will help you position yourself in a better place. And it kind of gives you that. Again, it's just pointing back to that first thing I said at the start about sort of being more natural. Obviously, with kids, you wouldn't be at eye level. They would be looking up to you. However, when you're looking through a screen, it's a bit strange if you're looking up at someone through a screen. It's much more engaging if you're at eye level. And like I mentioned, be at a distance that would feel natural if you're in real life. So being able to see your hands move, being able to see your upper body, and not just sort of like the underneath of your nostrils, which so many people do as an automatic thing because they've got the camera in their laptop. So the second thing is to stand out. So you want to, when you're seen on screen, obviously we're in a flat situation. It's 2D. Someone mentioned earlier, it's really like, it's harder to stand out, naturally because you're just a flat image. So you can help yourself stand out by making sure you're really well lit. And the simplest way to do that is to go sit in front of a window, is to really make sure you're well lit as possible. I don't, and like a lot of people, you're stuck at home. If you don't have a window that you can sit in front of, like I don't, it doesn't work in my apartment here. So I've got some lights here, right? So I've used, they're actually video lights, but you don't need video lights. You can get a lamp from around your house and just position it so you've got some extra light shining on you. Because if you are well lit in the foreground and that background's a bit darker, you're going to stand out a bit more. And you can probably see that from the way I look on screen here. My face is nicely well lit and it's quite kind of dark in the background. If anything, I struggle with my glasses. That's a common problem with the reflections. And you might notice me sort of tilt myself down just a little bit so that I'm not like totally being reflected out by the glasses when I'm talking. And the other thing you want to do to stand out is create contrast between yourself and the background. So I'm actually wearing, I often will wear like a bright shirt, so like a color, so that you're just standing out more. And all these tiny little things, all these tiny little touches kind of add to the overall image and allow you to sort of command yourself on screen a little bit stronger. So if you stand out from your background by creating contrast, then people can see you and you're much more likely to hold attention. So just simply wearing a different color or a color that stands out against your background can help with that. If you're just blending in, then you're not necessarily going to be seen as well as you could be seen. So the next thing, and this is more of an engagement point, is, and I'm sure you do this in class, but it might be a little bit not as obvious to do through a screen. So using names and eye contact. So if I call Darren's name, if I say, "Hey Darren," when I call that name, I want to be like calling that name straight down the lens, straight so Darren sees me looking at him through his screen. If I'm down there, obviously we all have to sort of monitor what's going on, so we're all looking down there a bit. But when you call someone's name, if you look at them and call their name through the camera, which you would do in real life, remember, you'd look at them and you'd say, "Hey Dave," or whatever it is. You wouldn't necessarily be looking down. So you've got to remember whenever you call someone's name to look up, look away from your screen down there, look up and look straight down the camera, and that will grab someone's attention. So if I say Anne-Marie, how are you finding this so far? you know, you're much more likely to pay attention than if I'm like looking away and not calling. If I just say to everyone, how are you finding it? It's not really going to do anything. Whereas if you pull somebody out and look down the lens at them, then they're much more likely to engage. And another tip is, if you do have a large screen, or if you whatever you have, when you've got your window open of your call, whether that's in Zoom or whether that's in Teams, if you can actually position, you can actually move this. If you grab on the corner, you can actually move the size of the sizing and positioning of your window on your screen, right? Like you can do with a computer normally. So what you can do is, if you position the screen so that it's at the top here, so it's right at the top, then like I'll explain that again. If you position people's faces so they're right at the top of your screen, rather than down in a corner or down here, then what will actually do is make the distance between you're looking down the lens and looking at the person a lot shorter, rather than looking down there and looking away from them. So positioning your Zoom screen or whatever it is so that the people's faces are right as close to the camera as possible can really help you to do your favor to maintain some of that eye contact. And one of the things I added is, you've got to use people's names more often than you would do in class. So you have to like dial up. If you think of the engagement tricks that you would have in class, like you'd pull out someone maybe to answer a question, or you would, you know, say, pay attention, whoever it is, or whatever, you've got to kind of dial that up a little bit so that you're using that technique more. You're calling people's names, you're asking for their feedback. You know, Catherine, are these tips helping so far? Good, great. So, you know, you're trying to use the name calling and eye contact as much as possible throughout as you're talking, just to keep people on the toes a little bit, right? Just keep people on the toes. So that's using names and eye contact. By the way, everybody, if you have any questions about any of these things or any of it's unclear, please note it down. Please do, and then you can ask them shortly. I've just pulled this together, you know, quite last minute, thinking of what's the principles that I can maybe pass on that would help overall, just in my expert area. So, you know, there's lots of stuff you've already said to me that you need. Some of this is not necessarily what you asked for, but hopefully it will prove helpful too. So do write down any questions that you have that kind of come up along the way. So number 4 is to raise your energy. So when you're on screen, and I know that's really hard for you guys at the moment, because asking you to raise your energy is like, you know, you might want to tell me to F off. But when you're trying to come across on screen and on video, you do have to make the extra effort in terms of your animation of yourself. And that means, you know, your hands, your spoken word, everything like that. And so one of the things I just added in this slide is that, you know, it's elements of personal communication. You guys probably know most of this anyway. It's less the words you say and more how you say them and how you're actually seen saying them, because so much of communication is body language. And that's another thing to do with positioning. If you're only seeing your face, right, you can't see your body language. You can't see you moving your hands. You can't see, you know, yourself moving forward or back, getting into whatever it is you're saying, the story you're telling. It's really important. Whenever I'm on video, I always try to use my hands, try to use myself and my energy just to keep moving a little bit and keep people, because it kind of catches people's eye and keeps them another way to keep engaged. So to keep your energy going in between classes, you know, give yourself a break. I've done back-to-back workshops quite a few times now where I've been teaching brands or whatever, and we'll do like, you know, a couple of hour session and stuff like that to keep the energy up. You have to get out of your seat. I know it's really hard for you because you've probably got so much to do on your computers, down at your desks, but really, really prioritize giving yourself some time standing up and moving around. Because when you're usually teaching, I'm guessing most of the time you're going to be on your feet, right? And you can do that, by the way. You can position if you can position at a standing desk or raise it up so that you're on your feet. That's fine too. If that's going to be something that's going to give you more energy and allow you to to do what you do best, then, you know, put your laptop on a shelf, get into that position that's going to give you the most energy. So make sure you're standing up between classes, you know, have a shakeout, have a dance, that kind of thing, just to keep your energy going, because you really do need to keep it up to, you know, to keep people engaged through the screen. I've already mentioned show your hands. Showing your hands not only is an element of trust. So there's studies that have said, and I can't remember the exact figure, but the studies that have said that it's something like around 70%. You're 70% more trustworthy if people can actually see your hands when you're talking. So that is, you know, if you're just seeing someone's face and you're not seeing anything else, whereas if you're seeing them and you can see their hands and more of them, you just instantly feel a little bit more trustworthy. And you would have that in real life, right? The students would see you in real life. So try to replicate that. And this last little tip here is one that actually I got given by a singing coach that actually translates to everything I've done, and I've noticed it in especially presenting on video, is to act as if you're talking to people younger than they are. And what I mean by that is, you'll be familiar, for those who teach young kids, maybe this is not so relevant, but if you are teaching older kids, when you do teach young kids, you're more likely to speak a bit slower, to be a bit more animated, to you know, to sort of give that vibe a little bit more, where you're trying to get them engaged and tell stories a little bit more animated and speak a bit clearer and slower. And that might just be a natural thing that people do when they speak to young kids. Oh, hello, how are you doing? You know, it's much more like that. So if you try to bring some of that in without being patronizing, of course, to your energy that you're presenting on camera, then it can really help to just be clearer and more engaging on camera. So just act as if your class is maybe just a little bit younger than they are, because they might need that extra bit of clarity because we're on screen. And then the last point is to optimize your calls. And this is one of the things that people have said already, is like the internet connection and the technology and stuff. So one thing you've got to make sure you're doing is stop everything else that's running in the background. Not only for a better internet connection, but just for any other distractions that you might have. Other Zoom and Teams, they're really, really heavy online. They take a lot of the bandwidth and they take a lot of your computing power. So you really want to make sure nothing else is going on in the background. So go down whether you've got a PC or Mac, it's down at the bottom, PC it's whatever programs you're running. I'm a Mac user. So go to the place where you can see all the programs that you're running on your computer, all the windows that you have open, and just close them up, get rid of them, just have sole focus on and sole bandwidth just being used on Zoom. And that goes for your mobile devices as well at home. If you're at home, it must be really hard, especially if you've got kids too, and they're using the internet and everybody else is using the internet. It can just go crazy. So you have to be really on top of closing anything else. If you're on your phone, you don't necessarily need your phone whilst you're giving the lessons. And actually, if you're connected to Wi-Fi on your phones, apps and stuff are running, they're updating all the time. So just turn your Wi-Fi off on your phone, put it on airplane mode, because that will help increase, you know, the bandwidth that you're using just for that task on your call. I mentioned go to full screen to reduce distractions. So yeah, you know, try not to have anything else on your screen, just make it your sole focus. And then the last one that someone mentioned about speed and about engagement is get to know the hotkeys that you'll use most. So when I say hotkeys, you can press a combination of keys on your keyboard that do instant things. So for example, if I do Command Shift A on my Mac, that right, if you need to, and the only way for you to know which ones you should use is to do this little exercise. Next time you're in a class, or you're teaching a class tomorrow, and you notice a little slow down in the pace, like you go, oh, I've got to do this, or I've got to do that. Write down that task of what you've got to do. Write down that change in technology that you're trying to make, whether that's to unmute everybody, or to switch to a screen share, or to do any of the things that you have to technically go and do, just make a note of a list of those things that you have to do and that you feel like you might have to do often. And then once you finish the session, go on Google, type in, if you've got a Mac, type in hotkeys for Mac for Teams to change screen, or whatever it is. Find the hotkey for each of those actions that you discover, and then list that hotkey next to that action that you wrote in that list. And then next time you have a lesson, just see if you know you've got to do that thing, have the list next to the computer, have it there, visible. And if you go, oh, I've got to change screen here, just have a quick glance and see if you can do the hotkey. Because if you do it, 3 or 4 times, and you start to remember the hotkey, or they're right there next to you on your screen, then it can be a lot quicker when you're moving around the technology if you're trying to change from screen to screen or do any of these things. But there's no point me listing every hotkey and telling you what you might need. What you have to do is just notice whatever it is that you're actually using most, and then write those hotkeys on a post-it somewhere else, and that can be a quick way of moving in between stuff. So that's the 5 tips and a bit of a breakdown of what I thought might be helpful. I realize totally that this is not necessarily for you guys, because you probably haven't been given any budget to do any of this stuff. But if you feel like you did want to do this anyway, I thought I'd just recommend some of the kit that I use, just in case you did want to set up stuff. So one of the kit upgrades, the main things is a light. So I mentioned you can use a lamp from your house, or just use a window, that's fine too. Or you might look at getting a video light, and there's lots and lots of different ones on Amazon. One I recommend is it's expensive if you're paying for it yourself and you're not getting any budget, but it's around 50 quid, and it's called Relano, and I'll type that in the chat box in a minute. And then webcams, obviously, so I'm using this webcam here, which is a Logitech webcam, which just gives me a little bit more clarity, and just a bit of a higher quality. I'm using this blue microphone here, which, hopefully my voice should sound pretty clear and crisp to you guys. One of the things with audio, if it's really easy for people to get switched off quick or to tune out, because if it sounds really bad, like the audio sounds bad. So having a microphone is a really good idea. If, as I say, these things do cost money, but I've just put them there if you are interested. And Blue, the brand Blue microphones, they do very good USB plug and play, really simple to use quality microphones, and they range from everything from I think this one was about 50 quid, and then they range up to lots. Blue ones range up to a few hundred. But even if you have, I see someone's got their earpiece on there and they're using that. A good rule of thumb is if you can use anything that isn't your internal microphone on your laptop, it's going to be better, because anything that's closer to your voice, like a headphone with a mic, and it's hanging here, is going to be probably provide much more clarity than an internal microphone built in your computer. And then the last thing is a laptop stand. It's a little stand that I've got that folds out, and it just can raise what we were talking about, raising your computer right up so that you're at eye level. So a laptop stand could do that. So there were a few kit upgrades that, potentially you could do, but I realize for a lot of you're probably not thinking that you want to necessarily spend too much money. And that's it. And I'll stop the share. And hopefully you guys, that was helpful. So if you have any questions on any of those points, then I'd love to try and help you with those now. I'm going to pop these back on so I can see you better. All the better to see you with, my dear.
Hi, I've got a quick question, if that's all right.
Sure, Philly.
Mainly about video camera. At the moment, I'm working off one that is obviously lower than my eye level. So looking at getting a new webcam, are these ones that just attach on top of the screens?
Yeah, so this Logitech one I mentioned, it's a USB, and it sort of sits on the top of my laptop screen. It clips on the top over the existing camera.
Okay, brilliant. And what sort of price range is a sort of a reasonable to get a good level?
I think this one was 90 quid.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a bit of a chunk of money. But yeah, I mean, if I can switch my cameras now and you can see the difference. So I've got a MacBook Pro, a fairly new MacBook Pro. I think it's 2018, I think. So it's not too old. Might even be newer than that. If I switch my camera, this is the Logitech. It's called a Logitech HD Pro webcam C920. If anyone's interested in the actual technicalities. If I now switch this to my FaceTime camera,
Okay.
it's a bit more sort of grainy and dark and dull. You know, it's I'm a video guy, so I notice the difference massively. You might not, but in general, it helps me in just the clarity. It helps you just stand out a bit. The other thing is, the reason why it still looks okay is because I've got the lighting, and the lighting will do a lot more for you than a camera will. So, switch it back. Another thing to note, you can also use your phone's camera. If you did want to use your phone as a webcam, there is an app called Epoch Cam. That's EPOCCAM. So I'll just put that in the chat. And that's an app where you can basically use your, I've just direct messaged you, Anne-Marie. So yeah, Epoch Cam. I realized, see, I still have problems with tech. I've realized that I'm just direct messaging Anne-Marie rather than everybody else. So and you know, it's fine just to make a joke of it and speak through it and carry on. So yes, Epoch Cam you can use it as a webcam. You can use your phone as a webcam, and that's a really good quality camera in your phone. But one thing I would suggest, Philly, is if you're worried about the sort of eye level thing, I'm not sure. So are you on a laptop at the moment?
No, I'm on main computer.
And where is the webcam on your main computer?
Lower down.
It's down on the bottom.
But it is a very temperamental one, as you may have noticed, that every time I touch it, I disappear.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, that could cause you. So then maybe you do look for a.
Yeah.
There are cheaper options than this Logitech one, but that's the one I've got, and it's.
Yeah. I think this is it. You go online. There's just a minefield of so many things you can select and choose from. Yep. You want a quick solution, but you don't want to choose a bad option either. So yeah.
Yeah. So I'd say this one is this C920. I've just put that in the and that's Logitech.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good option, but it costs a little bit of money. Cool. So does anybody else have any questions on any of those tips? Catherine.
Oh, hi. I'm doing a cookery on Wednesday, and I've got a double camera thing, which is very exciting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate, and then I was going to stop the Zoom and then be available for questions on Teams. Is there a way that might be a bit fiddly? Do you think there would be a way of sort of, would it be better to keep on Zoom and just freeze the picture and then do it on the chat down the side? What would you recommend? Because I don't want to be there for, you know, the whole while they cook. I don't want to be on screen for that length of time. Okay,
so one, I would just, if you're worried about the technology, just use as minimal things as you can. So I'd just say, yeah, just do one, just choose one and stick with that. The switching and getting, it's not just you switching, but it's getting everybody else to then open the new link and all of that stuff could really slow things down. And you mentioned you've got the 2 camera thing. So what do you mean by that?
Well, I've got my laptop and then I have my phone. So one is on me and one is on what I'm doing. All right, great. And are you comfortable with that setup? You've tested?
Yeah, I've done it before,
okay,
but it's just
The difference here is that I need to sort of demonstrate something, and then I want to be available to chat, but I don't want to be hanging around for sort of half an hour on the screen doing nothing. So can I put something when you're on Zoom? Can you somehow freeze the picture?
Yeah, well, you can. What you can do is you can have any image you want. Like if you had like a relevant image, maybe it's just a title says "Get on with your cooking" or whatever it might be, and then you can just switch to share screen, and then you can share that image. So you could have a holding image, like, you know, for some of the workshops that I do, if I'm waiting for a lot of people to come on, I'll just share like the title of the workshop, and that'll just be the whole image sort of thing.
Brilliant.
And that can just be a photo or whatever. And when you share screen on Zoom, you can select which thing you select. So you know, you might just make a one slide just saying put your questions in the chat box, or some instruction, just keep people on task. And then would you prefer to take the questions through the chat box, or would you prefer to take the questions from people?
Yeah, the chat box is fine. Chat box is fine. That's fine. That's brilliant. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, cool.
Just knowing the tips.
I missed that last bit, Catherine, but I think you were giving me a compliment, so I'll just take it as a compliment. Does anybody else have any questions?
This might be just thinking forwards a little bit. For me, it's where I'm doing sort of a little bit like Catherine and her dual screen. So where I'm demonstrating particularly maths, so I will have a camera on my whiteboard demonstrating, or on a piece of text, and then I'm also on Teams at the same time, and it's just controlling all that technology. Maybe forward thinking, maybe not today, but on another session, just how much, you know, how we can simplify it to keep it easy and less sort of entailing problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think the one main thing, which is something you don't necessarily have time to do, which is not really a great answer, but you kind of do, and you do have time to do, is the practice.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have time to do it because you've got to just do it straight away. But you will get more comfortable over time. And I'm sure, like I said a minute ago, it is a bit like panic stations at first because you don't know where everything is.
Yeah.
Those hotkeys can help, because you can have hotkeys for switching cameras.
Yes.
You can, so having that written down and just stuck on a post-it note right there, like switch camera, is probably command 2 or command 1 or something like that. I don't know what you're using, but having that written down on a post-it note and sticking that to your screen somewhere, or somewhere really visible, could help, because you might be 3 clicks away otherwise, rather than just a key on the lap. And what you can even do is, if you really want to, and what things like with video editors and anything that people really focus on hotkeys, is you can get tiny sticky dots, or whatever you might have as teachers, a little bit sticky, and if you want to, you can put that on a key on your actual keyboard, so you know, like green is switch camera, you can just put a green dot on your key. A lot of people do that for more complicated programs, when they have to remember lots of keys and switch through them faster. So you can just add little markers on your keys, and that can really help, you know. So that could be a tip that might help. But yeah, I think with technology, like, you can definitely, you know, there's definitely ways to simplify the presentation of things without knowing your current setup well. It's quite hard to answer, but I'd say, yeah, hotkeys. And I think Zoom is generally better and easier for multiple cameras.
Zoom, and I have an independent camera on the work, and then obviously I'm live on the camera on the computer, and it's, I think it's the hotkeys. That's what I need to get proficient at. Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, guys. Well, if there's no other questions, I'm just going to share with you the rest of some info on the rest of the week. Listen, you know, you guys are on. You're probably knackered by now. Anyway, from the day. And so don't feel compelled to come to all of the sessions. There will be different tips. There will be different people on every session giving you tips. I'll be here to sort of host it, but I'll have a guest, and I'll just share with you who those guests are. So yeah, feel free to come to any sessions and get, you know, more in-depth answers from people who know more specifics than I do around different things. I mean, everyone's got their own techniques. Everyone who's coming on anyway has got their own techniques and developed their own techniques in terms of presenting online. But it is from a place of most people have just had to do it quickly and have now spent probably nearly a year doing it. So hopefully we can share lots of stuff with you that will be helpful. Let me just find this here. So on tomorrow we have Matt Matheson, who is he's a speaking coach and a presenting coach and a facilitation coach, and he does all of his work online. So he's really good at anything to do with presenting yourself, you know, making things engaging online and he'll be able to answer a lot more tech questions as well, depending on what he uses. On Wednesday, we have my friend Spencer, who is a former head of media for a bunch of different colleges, and now he's an online facilitator and he's a product creator, and he does facilitation for big companies and brands online all the time. So he's going to have some tips to share with you, some personal tips that he's learned along the way. And then Jim, who is a learning experience designer, so he designs e-learning and designs online learning programs for companies. And he again too is a really, really great facilitator in terms of working online. And then Carol Rimmer, who's a current deputy head teacher, and she's also an experienced education coach, will be sharing her tips too, because she's been doing this online for a while, had a bit of a head start on lots of people too. So please, if you found this helpful, please share it with the rest of the teachers in your schools and anybody else you want to share it with. The email that you got, just have a little look in there. There's the link to sign up on the website, which will automatically then send those people an email with this Zoom link. And yeah, and hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully you picked up something. What I'd like to end with is if I could just ask you all, or those who would like to just share one thing back to me that you feel could potentially help you of what you've learned this evening, or any tips or tricks.
Well, I'll go first. Go for it. For me, it's it's shown me that I really need to sort out my camera and get my hotkeys sorted. Then life will be easy.
Great. We hope. Thanks, Philly. Anything else?
I think for me it was all very helpful about the positioning of you on the screen and the little everybody else on the screen. So the positioning in terms of aiding communication, that was very helpful.
Great. Good.
For me, it's actually using the chat function whilst we're on screen, because I realise now I can have my parents doing that. If they've misunderstood, it's really, really hard to try and explain to parents how really young children learn. And you keep saying, is there any questions or anything I can help you with? But I think they would be much more likely to use the chat function whilst I'm on the screen to say, can you explain that a bit more? Or that's not quite clear. So that's really helpful.
Good. Great colour top, by the way.
Yeah, that's a fluke.
You got the memo.
Yeah.
All right. Darren,
yeah, the positioning of yourself and thinking about that, that's really interesting, and something I'll think about tomorrow. And the microphone, I've got a microphone tucked in my desk at school, so I might dig that out and see if I can get that working. So yeah, the positioning, lighting yourself, lots to think about.
Cool. Okay. Thanks. Anybody else want to share anything they've picked up? No worries. Cool. Well, what the last thing I'll leave you with is, yeah, there are lots of people who've had to do this and just jump online and just figure this out on the go, as you guys are having to do now. You guys have got, you know, a harder challenge because you're trying to engage children rather than adults who necessarily are being told by their bosses to watch or have paid for, you know, being in on the lessons. So you know, just a round of applause to you guys for getting on and having a go at it and cracking on. And I would just say that yeah, I'll just reiterate the technology thing is the first sort of panic, and you do get used to it, and the more you do it, the more you'll get used to it. Just write yourself notes, stick them around just to help you, and then anything else in terms of like getting kids engaged and doing some engagement stuff. There'll be more this week from people who have got many more tips to share. So thanks for all coming and contributing to this first session. This will be available to watch for any teachers who, you know, hopefully this will be helpful to more teachers, not just you guys. The idea was just to create the sessions, create the videos, and then anybody can watch it back if they feel like they need some help. So thanks a lot and have a lovely evening.
Thank you. Bye.
And please do spread the word.
Thank
All right.
you.
Cheers. See you guys.